live, recorded live in front of a studio audience at the Ohr Somayach studios, the Kuzari. All right, so if you remember the last year we gave, which was on Monday, we discussed the beginning evidence for Judaism. And the discussion was, for those of you who are new to this class, Shlomo, you're new, you weren't here. So there's a king who is the king of the Khazars, who has a recurring dream. And the dream is very specific. Your actions are wrong, but your intention is good. Okay? That's what the angel in the dream tells the king over and over. And the king decides to invite various leaders of different religions to try to find out more about their religious beliefs and therefore help him resolve his core issue. Now, for us, for those of us who are learning the Kuzari in order to have a better understanding of Judaism, we have to understand there's something very specific about the king. The king is coming with a religious experience. He is having a spiritual experience that prompts him to begin a quest. He's not coming as a guy who is sitting on the bus and somebody says, "Hey, you want to talk about Moses?" I'm like, "Sure, I got nothing else to do." No, he's highly motivated and he's very much into trying to figure out the message that he's getting. Telling him that he is delusional, as what the philosopher told him, didn't work. He brought a philosopher, the philosopher explained to him the philosophical view of religion, and it didn't work. Why? Because it doesn't match the experience of the king, which is his dream. And so then he turns to the Christian, and the presentation of Christianity doesn't really make sense to him. He doesn't seem to understand the whole concept of the Trinity, and therefore he rejects Christianity. And then he turns to Islam, where the piece of evidence for Islam that is brought is the miraculous nature of the Quran. And yet, he says, I don't speak Arabic. I don't speak Arabic. And if I don't speak Arabic, then I cannot evaluate the validity of the claim that this is wondrous or miraculous work. Right? Imagine if our furry little friend over here, which I call everybody furry little friend, but if our furry little friend brought you a book in Ukrainian and said, "This is the bomb. This is it. The truth for everything." But how do you know this is it? Because the language, the Ukrainian language over here is used in such a high level, no human being could ever write it. So you must follow it. Your first time is like, how am I supposed to know? I don't know. I can't even read the alphabet. So that's that. So the king says both the Christians and the Muslim made reference to the Jews. Let's bring a Jew. Let's ask a Jew, what does he believe in? And he brings a chaver, a rabbi, and the rabbi begins with a soliloquy, right, a monologue, short, that puzzles the king. Why? Because when the rabbi begins, he says, I believe in the God of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, who took us out of Egypt. And the king says, why don't you speak about the creator of the universe that created you and like everybody else? The Christians spoke this way, the Muslims spoke this way, the philosopher certainly spoke this way, although he doesn't believe in creation and time. And the Jewish person says, let me explain something to you. And then he gave him the mashal, the parable of the king of India. This is what we discussed last time. That if somebody told you about a king of India that is so wonderful, and Baal Chesed and all that, would you believe it? And he says, well, I don't have any evidence to accept it. Just people are saying that. Maybe there's no king. Maybe the people are good people just because that's their nature. So I don't really have any evidence to accept or not accept. So he says, okay, but what if somebody showed up, you get a letter from the king, and the letter includes with it medicine to keep you healthy and biological weapons to defeat your enemies without having to go to battle? Would you now believe the claim that this king is benevolent and that his people are, So although Azriel didn't really like that, he wasn't willing, maybe some kind of a trick. Also, Alan was very skeptical. You figure out the guy from Ukraine and the guy from, you didn't. Okay, so just the guy from Brooklyn. Got it. And so he says, once I get a piece of evidence directly from the king to myself, plus a gift, then I am going to accept that this king is Baal Chesed. That's where we almost left off. We did a little piece, which we're going to do now. And then we're going to continue. He says, so that's the answer that I gave you, says the rabbi, fits to the mashal or the parable of the king of India. Because when you asked me, I told you the exact things that Moshe Rabbeinu said to both Paro and the Jewish people. He said, the God of the Jews, of the Hebrews, sent me to you. That is the God of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And that was something that people knew. People knew who Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov were. Certainly in Mitzrayim. Right? Especially there's a machlokes, as you know, whether when it says that there was a Paro that did not know Yosef, right? The machlokes between Rav and Shmuel, whether this was a brand new Paro, or it was the same guy, but he just decided, I've had enough of these Jews. And it's time to make sure that they don't get uppity. So he says that it was also known that the Amar Ilahi, the Inyana Eloki, the spiritual connection between them and God was known, and that God provides for them, has special providence, and not only that, does miracles for them. And that's why he says that Moshe Rabbeinu did not say to Paro, I believe in the gods of the heaven and the earth that sent me. He didn't say, the creator of my creator and your creator, there's one creator, and the creator sent me. He didn't say that. He said, what? Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Why? Because that's something that he knew. It was something that Moshe Rabbeinu received from generation to generation. And we're going to continue with that. When God began speaking to the Jewish people in the 10 Commandments, or the 10 utterances, dibrot means utterances, not commands. It says, Anochi Hashem Elokecha shehotziecha me'eretz Mitzrayim. What? What did I miss?
Nothing.
Yes? You want to fill me in? Okay. So, God said, I am the Lord your God who took you out of Egypt. He didn't say, I am the creator of the universe. Certainly was the creator of the universe. But that wasn't the whole conversation between him and the Jewish people in Har Sinai. Why? And so he says, I gave you the same answer. You asked me what I believe. I told you what obligates me and obligates the Jewish people, which is something that had passed on from generation to generation that was witnessed by people with their own eyes. Yetziat Mitzrayim was an experience of the Jewish people, of the national experience, and the same thing of Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah, was something that they experienced and they passed it on from generation to generation. And therefore, that's what I received. I'm not telling you some theoretical model that I worked out in my basement. I'm telling you exactly what happened is I received from my father, who received from his father, who received from his father, going all the way back to the actual event itself. Think about this, just an idea. How many Seders, Lela Seder, right? When you sit with the Haggadah, the whole thing, right? Recline on your left. How many Seders passed from the first Seder till today when you go from grandfather to grandson? About 55. Grandfather to grandson. And that grandson becomes a grandfather and he passes on to his grandson. If you do that, it's around, somebody did the figures and it's around 50 something. It's not that far away. We think of 3,500 years ago as, not me, my friend. When I was in a departmental meeting, when I was teaching in university, there was a historian there. And we started talking, and he was telling me that he's a historian of the 1600s and 1700s. And I said to him, you're a journalist. You're not a historian. Stuff hasn't been dead for 500 years. You know, after 500 years, you got something to talk about. It's dead. So, what do you use? Newspapers? And he actually did some, old newspaper. It's like okay, so that's my bias as a medievalist. That, when I started my graduate work, I was in a department that was known as the deader, the better. Right? The older it is, the better it was. There were Egyptologists, there were Assyriologists, right? Assyriologists are people who study the Akkadians. So it's like, long time ago. And then, comes people who study, the Bible, which is like, you guys are late. You remember, I think, if I remember correctly, that the pyramids existed about 900 years by the time the Jews got to Egypt. It's mind-blowing. When people tell you the Jews built the pyramids, smile and tap them on the head and say, go away. Go away, have a cookie. Okay. So he says, I am telling you what became true, became clear to the Jewish people because they had first-hand experience. They experienced this. And that experience was transmitted from person to person in the Masorah, in the tradition. And that is similar as if you saw it with your own eyes. Now, for those of you who are really interested in this argument, so as you know, Rabbi Gottlieb has a book on this particular principle, the Kuzari principle, and he's given lectures on it. You can find it online. But his book on Reason to Believe, the first part of the book, is giving the philosophical underpinning of this argument. Okay, we're not doing philosophy in depth here. We're learning the book. But that, if you're interested to see how that actually works, is found in his book in great detail. So the king says, so that's why you said what you said. So therefore, what you told me only obligates you to follow the Torah. Right? The other religions are claiming what? That why do we have to follow what God wanted, what God wants? It's because He created us. That's what the argument is for Islam, and that's what the argument is for Christianity. But the rabbi is making a completely different argument. And he's saying the reason that we believe what we believe is because God appeared to our ancestors, and this happened, and He commanded us to follow the Torah. So he says, okay, so then the Torah is only for you people. It has nothing to do with me. So he says, you're right. You're right. He said, you're right. And he says, now, anybody who joins the Jewish people and wants to follow the Torah, all the good that Hashem will do for us will also do for him. But, and this is the controversial piece of the Kuzari, but they are not equal to us. So who is he talking about? What? Gerei Tzedek. He's talking about converts. So the Kuzari here is proposing a position that converts and Jews are not identical or equal in that sense, but rather there's a bit of a differentiation. He's going to explain what the difference is. But he says they're not equal to us. Because now, why not? And now remember, the position of the Kuzari is not the position of everyone. Okay? So there are different opinions in Judaism, and nobody needs to get all upset and write letters. But we're learning the Kuzari, and we have to be true to what the text says, and then we have to look at other positions and see what is our position. So he says, if the obligation to follow the Torah is because God created all of us, then all human beings would be equal in their obligations to Torah. White, black, everybody was created by God, and therefore we would have the equal obligation. But since our obligation comes because of Yetziat Mitzrayim, that God took us out of Egypt to give us the Torah, right? This is the time of year, Sfiras HaOmer, right? He took us out of Egypt in order for us to get the Torah, right? So he says the whole point of our connection to Hashem and our chosenness is because of that. And therefore, the relationship that we have with Hashem is because of Yetziat Mitzrayim. And therefore, it's not because God created everybody. It's true that God created everybody. He created the people in China, He created people in Europe, and people in Gaza, and the people in Israel. Everybody is created in the image of God. That's true. We don't deny that. But our obligation to keep the Torah and to develop our relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, for us, it's dependent on Yetziat Mitzrayim. So the king, after listening to this, says, you're flip-flopping here, my friend. You know what a flip-flop is? Say one thing, you go to the other. He says, you're changing what you're saying. It made sense in the beginning, but now you lost me. There's something wrong with what you're saying. So the rabbi says, give me some time and I will explain to you everything in detail so you'll understand there's no problem with it. So he says, go ahead. Now comes a very, very interesting part of the beginning of the Kuzari, which requires us to put on our thinking caps and see that we're looking at not quantitative differences, but qualitative differences. Okay, keep that idea in mind, and then it'll be easier to understand. He says, would you not admit that there is a natural order? For example, that we are all obligated. For example, taking food. Right? Have you met a human being that can survive without food? The answer is no. All life, right? All life require nourishment. Whether you're a plant or an animal or a human being, you require nourishment. Fair enough or not? I want to build the argument so that everybody's with us. Okay. And also, growth and reproduction. Right? All living things have that. Plants grow, do they not? Do they reproduce? If not, okay? And their faculties and conditions, whether they're plants or animals, those plants and animals have these abilities. They have an ability to take in nourishment, they have an ability to grow, and they have an ability to reproduce. Now, you might tell me, but Rabbi, I met some guy that he can't have children and he... Okay, but at a species level, right, not as individuals, right, that is the norm. Fair enough? Well, when I was at the zoo, there was a penguin that could not reproduce and they didn't know what to do. So they fed him to the killer whales. No, come on. What? Hey, we're taping this and we're not going there. The penguin decided his own gender, apparently.
No, just orientation, but I digress. Still recorded, though.
Well, I'm sure people in America are watching this, so they'll probably know what you're talking about more than me. Okay. But the earth, minerals, stones, the four elements of water, fire, air, and earth don't have these qualities. And you can try it. I would strongly suggest get 2 rocks, put them in your room, and see, will they grow? Will they reproduce? Right? Will they take nourishment? If you put some food on the rock, will it be gone the next day? No, you're getting an aquarium and you're sealing it. Don't give me like the cat came in and, oh my God, it ate. They don't do that, right? Avatar. What? Avatar. What's an avatar? Avatar, isn't that those fake like images that you create of yourself?
Yeah.
Ah, okay. What's he talking about? I'm telling people are going to write letters. You better clean it up there, mister. There better not be anything negative about an avatar. That we have to do tshuva now and go to the mikveh. And okay. So that's clear. So the king says, yeah, that makes sense. You're right. Plants and animals, including us, have those abilities. But anything below plants and animals, right? Metals, minerals, stones, rocks, earth, don't have water, right? You put 2 droplets of water, will you get 3 drops?
1 big drop.
You and get 1 big drop. Okay, good.
When you put ice in water, it becomes bigger.
Okay. Now, but there's also more qualities that animals have. For example, movement, motion, right? Animals have an ability to move. Also, they seem to have ratzon, right? There's certain things they want, certain things they don't want. They have, now, with regard to human beings, we have midos, moral characteristics, right? Some people are quick to anger. Some people are very slow to anger. There are people who are outgoing. There are people who are more introverts. There are people who are funny. Then there are you guys, right? And then you have senses, right? You have the sense of touch, which is an external sense. You have eyesight. You have hearing, taste, right? Taste is an internal, right? Because you have to put it inside. Unless you stick your tongue out and walking around licking things. Unless you see a 3-year-old do that, and then you put those, laundry plastic. Ah! So animals also have some of this. Animals have senses, right? Animals also, some animals, and don't bring me like a fish, but some animals dream. Right? Have you ever seen a dog dream? They have this whole thing that they're running and they're doing and they're laying. You have to wake them up. You're like, whoa, where am I? It's exactly like a human being. It's unbelievable. You're looking at me like I landed from the moon. I'm serious. You've never seen a dog? Yeah, okay. You're from LA. You know dogs.
How do we know they're trained?
What? Well, you see that the dog... What? You said you what? Yeah, you know it's taping. Now you're like, oh, what? I'm not... You know, I'm going to send this video to your mother. Now she's going to like, oh, I heard his voice. He's identifying as a dog now. I guess no Torah Thursdays after all. Okay. So animals have, to some extent, some level of emotions. Now, the king says, yeah, I don't deny that either. Right? Dolphins, chimpanzees, orangutans, right? They're very complex beings. But he says, there's a quality that human beings are qualitatively different than all animals. We have something that other animals don't have. Which is what? We have the ability for rational thinking. We can do geometry. We can do trigonometry. We can do calculus. What?
That's rational.
That's rational. It is?
That's irrational.
What? You're nodding no? You cannot?
I can do it incorrectly. But I can do it.
Okay.
Capable doesn't mean if you are good.
Don't mean you should.
So he says we have something called seichel, an intellect. And through our intellect, we are able to improve our moral character. We can figure out with our mind what is right and wrong. People know that what is right and wrong if they think about it. The problem is the Yetzer Hara clouds their judgment. And once they have tikkun amidot, they can also figure out tikkun, the management of a household, of a family. How to run a family. That requires thinking. Right? When you guys go on a shidduch date, that's one of the conversation pieces. What kind of a home do you want? And there's a back and forth. She'll tell you what she wants, and you're like, I never thought about that. Me doing the dishes? Okay, I guess I could do that. Oh, and my mother's going to come and spend Shabbosim with us. Next! So, from the having ability to use your seichel, you are able to perfect your moral character, which leads you an ability to perfect a family, to affect others, to educate them to become better and better people. And from that, you could actually come to organizing tikkun of the state, of society. It all are corollaries of the seichel. Now, the Rambam Mishmona Prakim says that our intellect really falls onto two categories. There's a practical intellect and theoretical intellect. I've given you examples of theoretical intellect, of geometry, trigonometry. Those things are theoretical. But there's things that are practical intellect, such as how to budget your checking account, how to get from here to the airport and back. That is called practical intellect. Okay? So we have an ability to do practical things, building a house. Okay? And we have also an ability to think about very theoretical concepts, such as God, relationship of God to the world, understanding mitzvot of the Torah. To some extent it's practical, but some extent also requires a higher level when we ask the why. And so says Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, that's how we've developed what the field is called political science, which is the art of, I'm calling it an art even though I said political science, because really it's not science. And I'm a political science major, gentlemen. You heard it here. It's an art of how to manage a state or people. It's an art. But that you need to use your mind. So the king says, I agree with you, that's true. So what did we just do? So we're covering the entire creation. We went from qualities that rocks have, to plants and animals, to now to humans, and what is specific to human beings. And then he says, the rabbi says, Avi, what is a higher madrega than that of a human being? Is there such a thing in the physical world? Okay, so one person says there isn't. Who do you said there is? Who?
The Jews.
The Jews. What about you? Can you fly? No. What?
We have horns.
Yeah. Okay, sit over here. With that haircut, of course you have horns. What?
We control the weather.
Yeah, we control the weather. Okay.
You have all the money?
Guys, what is this? Introduction to how do we create anti-Semitism in 3 minutes or less? We run the world, we control the weather, we got all the money.
What was the question?
What's the question? What's the question? He says, is there a madrega above human beings with intellect in the physical world? So Azriel says, no, there isn't. This is it. This is it. But, says the Kuzari, the madrega of great sages. Sages. People who are very, very smart. Sages. Wait, that's what he suggested. So he says, I'm not looking for qualitative differences. There is a qualitative difference between the Rambam, right, and some simple Jew that never studied Torah. There's a qualitative difference. No, it's a quantitative difference. From a quantity perspective, the Rambam is more intelligent than him. Right? What's the Einstein IQ compared to my IQ? Right? So, yeah, but that's within a quantitative scale. It's not quality. There is something that changes completely the category. We have one category, but you have a scale. Right? You have a spectrum. You have people who are smart over here, and then people who are not so sharp, right? Not everybody is the sharpest knife in the drawer. Not everyone is the brightest candle on the Chanukiah, on the menorah. Some of them bright a little, That's okay. Why are you I'm serious.
Very comforting.
Yes. The Kadosh Baruch Hu created us, right, and gave us our nature. Certain amount of knowledge, certain amount of ability, of intelligence, certain amount of, let's say, good moral qualities, certain amount of negative that we need to work on. We're not all brainiacs like you. Right, Baruch?
Yeah.
Not everybody's like you.
It's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It depends. So says the rabbi, I don't mean from a madrega that is simply quantitative. I'm looking at an essential difference, that there is a whole new category that exists that is completely different. Like the difference between an inanimate object to vegetation, and vegetation to animals, and from animals to human being. There's another category after human being. Now you're thinking, no way. And so he says, I don't see anything in the world, in the physical world, that provides us such beings. You want to talk about angels? You want to talk about... So the rabbi says, well, what if you have a human being that will not burn if you throw him in a fire? Is that a qualitative difference? or that could live a long time with no food or drink. We're not talking about 2 days. We're not talking about 3 days. We're not talking about 2 weeks. We're talking about 40 days and 40 nights. No food or drink, nothing. That his face shines such that you couldn't even look at him. Like, whoa! Now, we're not talking about going to Walmart and you see the summer teeth that you go, oh, what happened here? Right? We're not talking about that. We're talking about the light that was shining from the face of Moshe Rabbeinu. And that he didn't get sick. He did not become weak. Right? On the last day, the Torah says, on the last day of his life, he climbed the mountain. Whoop, whoop, whoop. How many 120-year-olds do you know that could do that? Right? I remember we went with Yeshiva on a trip to Gamla. Okay? I barely left my lungs on there. I was like, I'm not going to make this. Better get the chopper. It's like, I'm done. I'm finished. I made it, thank God, Baruch Hashem. Okay? But this is like a big deal. Okay? And I'm not 120. Yeah, I can run, 3-5 kilometers, but I don't know that I could push myself farther than that. After that, it's sort of the body said, hey, we're shutting down, buddy. Okay? Get us some ice cream, or we're not doing anything. And so, he says also that when the person decides he's going to die, he lays down and that's it. Do you imagine? Like, okay, I think it's enough. So my birthday is 7th of Adar. I'm laying down, Gamarna. Now, also, what if that person knew things that happened in the past and things that are in the future, and he knew it? Would this not be a qualitative difference that would separate him from all human beings? So he says, if there is such a reality, that's what the king says, if there is such a reality, it would be sort of divine or angelic. It's not something that is either rational or has to do with the soul or has to do with vegetation. It's got to be something that is divine. He says, now what if I told you it's not just one person, but that this happened to other prophets? That, now he says, all the things that I described are of Moshe Rabbeinu, as we said, and nobody rejected his prophecy because they saw it with their own eyes. They saw it. And this prophet not only removed the darkness of their own history, right? Because Moshe Rabbeinu told the Jewish people what happened from the beginning of time. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. He started at the beginning, covered the flood, covered all the things. He's explaining to them the process of how humanity developed up to them, and how we're all related to Noah, and how the flood occurred, and how all the nations of the world are related to the children of the sons of Noah. And he explained to them how come there are different languages and where human beings settled, and how different arts, right, metallurgy, right, husbandry, taking care of animals, how those developed. And he also told them how many years passed from creation and the life of Adam Arishon all the way to them. So he says, the king says, wait a second. You're telling me that you have a reliable age of the universe? And he says, yes. we count year after year on the same calendar since Moshe Rabbeinu set it up. We're simply following what he gave us. Right? In the year of 1948, from creation, Avraham Avinu was born. Okay? Then go from there, 400 years, right? All of the dates, they're all there. So he asked him. And he said, the Kuzari says, the rabbi says, all Jews anywhere in the world all have the same calendar. And we all count the same way. There's no disagreement. There isn't if you travel to, I don't know, Calgary, and you ask a Jew, hey, what year are you guys? Oh, we're 5,412. What? How'd you get that? And then you travel to somewhere else and they have a different calendar. Right? And the Kuzari is right, that Rabbi Yehuda Halevi is writing at a time where Jews were isolated. It's not like today. That you would get to Yemen, you get to places and you're like, oh, everybody's on the same calendar. Everybody knows when Rosh Hashanah is. Everybody knows when Hanukkah is. Okay, we'll stop here and we'll continue tomorrow. Im Yirtzeh Hashem.